Feross, are you available for Q&A like before? I know you just finished your presentation here, but I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, I can do, probably like 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Number one, I wanted to say like this was a really great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I actually got a lot out of it, a lot of value too for, this presentation. One thing that just kind of like went up in my own head is that, as a senior dev too, right? Like I am working in a lot of different NPM packages. And you're right, like people don't really sit there and like scan everything and go, oh, what security risk is there or vulnerability? So when you were showing like all the examples, I was just like, wow, mind blown, right? Like so I think you just made everybody here realize that and probably more valuable for their job now if they're aware of it. So
Mhm. Yeah. And it's
uh,
something too that I think, like you don't realize like how many years I've been running npm install on my laptop for years and years and years. And I don't know what has been installed at this point, that might have affected my system. So it starts to make you think like, should we be using containers for all of our apps? Should we be using,
oh
cloud
yeah.
development environments? Like, should we, you know, I mean, Socket has something that can kind of help, which is we have a thing that wraps npm so that whenever you run npm install, it actually runs socket npm install, which is an alias. It sets up an alias in your terminal so that socket npm install can actually check what dependencies would be installed on your system, and before they actually get installed, it'll just check with us and say, hey, are there any sketchy or anything malicious in this dependency?
Mhm.
And if there is, it'll stop the install before it can proceed. So there's things like that. It starts getting you thinking, what can I do to make sure that, I'm protecting myself?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think and I want to give time for the questions that just came up. Um, but I want to say, like the little examples that you were showing, right? Like for the NPM script that runs on the server side, I think, and pulls all the process and environment variables. That one, I could see that happening. The other thing too is a lot of and I was thinking about this today, right? Like a lot of the websites that are out there have been abandoned. I would say almost like for the last like, 10 years because a lot of people moved over to social media to start like, posting their content. Like back in the day, people used to like make like WordPress sites or mini like React projects and just, you're right, like people kind of abandon them like you showed with that example. And if someone else comes in and like, works on that or, like a malicious person, a lot of people outsource these days too, right? Um, somebody gets a hold of that, they could start, like putting like malicious, spyware and, junk in there, you would have no idea. So, um, I think like I think that's a huge thing you brought to light today. Um, Joey, I guess you asked a question about like the center cube. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I was just wondering because like you were pointing out like some of the inconsistencies like with using that npm audit and like the way it works, and it's kind of like giving you like false positives, and in many ways you're like chasing your tail on a never-ending stream of like vulnerabilities. But then on the other side of the hand, like I see the benefit of like your project and your what your product is, but I'm just wondering like how does that compare against like a premium that you would pay for, such as SonarQube, or maybe another one like Tenable, where you're explicitly like specifying more granular on the rules, and it's behind a premium. So there's an assumption that with that premium, like
Mhm.
you're getting that core level of scanning that's like required. Like just to that note,
Yeah,
I said,
that's a great question. So, I mean, right off the bat, I'll just mention like these other tools you mentioned are, they're all great. They're better than nothing, right? And they're better, certainly better than not using anything and not caring about this problem. Um, my opinion, my take on it is that I think this industry, all these vendors haven't really improved their products in quite a while. And I mean, this is my opinion, but I think that the vulnerability scanner market has stagnated and hasn't changed much in the last 10 years. Um, and fundamentally, what they're really doing is they're almost all of them are pulling their data from the same database. which is the National Vulnerability Database. It's called the NVD. It's what a lot of people refer to it as. And um, basically what that is it's whenever a vulnerability is discovered, you know those CVE numbers you get, like CVE and then a number that follows it. Um, when you find a vulnerability, it gets a CVE number, which is just an identifier for the vulnerability, and it gets put into that database. And that database then gets consumed by all the different vulnerability scanning tools, things like even Dependabot, right? Uh, uh, SonarQube, all of them use the same data. And then because that data can be kind of messy, sometimes they'll do a little bit of cleanup or post-processing of it to try to kind of make it, um, you know, uh, a little bit more accurate. And so that's something that is a value that they provide. It was they can try to say, oh, this CVE that was filed, said every version was vulnerable, but it actually turns out only certain versions are vulnerable. And so they can try to fix that up, clean that up before you as the user have to see that bad data. But that's pretty much it. The biggest problem, I'll go back to that slide I showed about the problems with NPM audit, is that I really think that if you look at these tools, they're not doing anything about reachable vulnerabilities. And to me, that's a really big one, which is, when you get back results from these tools and you see you have 500 vulnerabilities, and it turns out that 400 of them, actually aren't run in your application at runtime. Um, you can go fix them. You can go and upgrade to new versions, but in a way that's sort of like fake work or meaningless work because it's not really making your application safer. It's just it's just making the alert go away. And so I think the most like exciting area that I'm seeing, where I'm seeing this market like improve is around that type of stuff. So how do you figure out of your 500 vulnerabilities, like if I can only fix 20 of them this week, right? Or 10 of them this week, like which 10 am I going to work on? Which are the most important? And you shouldn't be working on ones where the code isn't even running or where the code is in a developer dependency and it's not even going to run in production, right? So I don't know exactly what like the tools you mentioned actually do, whether they do this or not, but this is the thing I'd be asking is like, how does the tool help me prioritize and like spend my limited time on the most important stuff?
Okay, yeah. So for those, it's more along the lines of providing you like SAST and DAST scanning, so
Hmm.
static code analysis or dynamic application scanning, just depending on like how they're
Hmm.
configured. So for like the tool that you've like created and worked on, like for somebody that's new to using these tools and somebody that's barely viewing and gets to see this in the future, like what's the learning curve for somebody to implement this in their project and like try these tools out? Like what does that look like? Would you say it's a fairly complicated setup and configuration required for somebody new to these tools that's never done this
No,
before, or is it pretty
no,
easy and streamlined?
yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, I can even show you here. It's really, really simple. Um, it's a GitHub app, which so I mean, there's different ways to install us. We have a CLI, we have a bunch of support for a whole bunch of different integrations, but the most common way people use this is a GitHub app. And so you just click install, and then I've already installed it here, so it's not really um uh well, darn it, I'm not even signed in. Okay, well, that's a problem here. Let me do that quickly here, but it'll just ask you like, what organization do you want to install the tool on? And I've already installed it on a few, so it's giving me this configure option. But I would just pick Feross or whatever organization I want to install it on, and then just like that, it's done. It's installed. Um, and then what you're going to get is you're going to get a bunch of things. You're going to get listing of all your alerts. You're going to get a listing of all your dependencies. So we know every dependency that's used in your organization. So if you ever get asked, hey, are we using XYZ? You'll be able to find those dependencies. You'll get like I said, the list of alerts. So all of your kind of findings that you have, all your CVEs, your malware. Hopefully you don't have any malware, but looks like one of those just popped up here. Um, so you'll get things like that. And then you can kind of decide how you want to handle these. So do you want to block them? Do you want to block the malware when it comes up? Prevent the developer from installing it, block it directly in their pull request, or do you want to just warn them about it and let them proceed if they feel like it? Do you trust them? So there's different types of things you might want to put into those different categories. And then there's monitor, which is do you want to just be aware of it as a security team member, like in this dashboard, and not tell the developer about it at all? And this is a really good category to use for when you're first trying out a new rule and you want to see like what would blocking deprecated packages look like? How many alerts would I get? You can put it into the monitor category, and then when you go to your alerts, you'll see all those things that would affect developers if you were to move them into the warn or the block category. So that's pretty much how it works. I mean, it's really, really straightforward. And then, the integration into the developer workflow is also pretty seamless. And I'll show you that here really quick. It just basically it just leaves comments on your PRs. So if you have a PR like this where I'm adding a new dependency, um, this is a PR where I'm just, making a little simple change. I'm adding browser list and I'm adding some configuration here. And then my package lock file changed, which is usually collapsed by GitHub. What Socket will do is it'll say, hey, look, you added a new dependency. First of all, we detected that you did that. That's fine. But just so you know, just so everyone knows who's reviewing this PR, we want everyone to know there was a new dependency added. You can click here to learn more about it. So if you click there, you'll go to Socket and you'll get a whole bunch of information about the package. This turns out to have some issues in it that are pretty bad, and it has a pretty bad quality score. But let me show you kind of what you see directly in the GitHub workflow. So you'd see, first of all, environment variables are being used, which is, as we've seen, pretty dangerous. If you're curious where or what it's doing, you can click this link and it'll take you directly to the details of what environment variable is being used and where it's being used. And you can click in and it'll take you straight to the line and you can decide if you think that that is reasonable or safe. And then, if there is a security threat, only in the case there is a security threat, we will leave this comment. And this will show up for any of the alerts you've specified as blocking or warning the developer. They'll show up like this. And so this package actually has two problems in it. It has typo squat and protestware. So a typo squat means that the name of the package is actually a typo of another package. And as you can see here, we should have installed browsers list, not browser list. So it's an S missing there. And if I click through here, you can actually see browsers list is just way more popular, way better scores. It has no alerts, no issues. So this is what we should have installed. This has 50 million downloads. Instead, what we installed has 20,000 downloads. It has all these problems in it. So just like that, we were warned, and then we were given kind of our next steps on what to do here. What is this? What do I do? How do I remove it? What do I do if I disagree and I want to mark it as acceptable, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I want to take another question real quick, Joey, because we had Cariano, I'm saying your name right, and Carolina, will ask questions too. So just in order,
Yeah.
we wanted to just ask, do you see similar issues using PNP, M, or Yarn, which are different package managers besides NPM?
Yeah,
And
they have all the
then,
same issues. Yeah. PNPM and Yarn. I mean, they pull from the same package registry. So NPM has many package managers are in JavaScript. I mean, there's Yarn, PNPM, there's now Volt, there's even stuff that Dino is doing now with JSP. I think it's JSM or something. So there's so many of these, but they most of them pull directly from NPM. Not all of them, but PNPM and Yarn pull packages from the same location, so they don't really
hmm,
have any advantages for at least for the types of security issues we're talking about here. Yeah,
okay,
but fortunately, Socket can scan PNPM and Yarn projects
as
just fine.
well.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other question here is, does Socket notify you about conflicts with dependencies? For example, does it alert you when an update causes compatibility issues with another package?
That's a great suggestion. So we don't do that today. We are working on auto fix features. So if you do have an alert, you can click a button and have it just automatically open a PR and fix the problem for you. When we do implement that and ship that feature, we'll make sure that it doesn't try to upgrade you to something that causes compatibility issues. But today, because we have that workflow where we're in the PR, Um, Usually, it's the developer who's updating the dependency or taking those actions. And so it's really sockets coming in and scanning and just making sure what you're doing is safe. But we're not kind of suggesting upgrades for you, um, in that PR. And so it's really on you to make sure you're not like um, doing upgrades that would be incompatible. But certainly when we ship our autofix feature, in the next couple of months, we will make sure that it doesn't suggest anything that would be a incompatible upgrade. Yeah.
Okay. Joe, do you have a quick question, or I also want
Yeah,
to
real
give
quick.
the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, go
My
ahead.
last question and quick one, in scope of like the vulnerabilities as they're reported, is there a feature yet that offers like a remediation recommendation? So you see the vulnerability, it's being detected, and
Mhm.
apart from giving you the option to either accept it or not accept it, is there like remediation that you can
Mhm.
see that'll
Yeah.
tell you exactly what the recommended remediation is?
Yeah. So today the recommendations we provide are basically telling you to upgrade to the version that doesn't have the vulnerability anymore. Um, if it's a malicious package and there's not, there's um, no, there's never been a good version of it, the whole thing is like a typo squat, then our only remediation is don't use this package. It's a bad package. So that's sometimes the remediation. Uh, but then in other cases, we can have a specific version that we recommend you. Like this is the version you should switch to solve this problem. Um, that is something that we show today. And then what we're working on kind of this quarter is shipping something like I mentioned before that automatically not just tells you, oh yeah, here's what you need to do, but actually can run the necessary commands and then open a PR for you and allow you to just review that PR and click merge to have it remediated. And so that's something we're doing again, like I said, this quarter. So it's not in the product today, but it's coming really soon.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to say thank you again, Joey. Hopefully that answers your question and cut you off. I see. All right. So I wanted to also just say again, this is a great presentation. He definitely brought awareness to things that I think a lot of people don't really actually think about. So I would love to keep in touch and just continue to have you, come by and talk to us at the group and just continue to advise, especially in this area. I feel like this is such a great topic that gets overlooked a lot. Um, I think like if nothing else, if you don't have any more to share with us today, we can also email you and ask questions there. And then I did want to say to the group as well, one thing I want to do for meetups ongoing, like 'cause now we're in full force and we're doing meetups again. So HackBuddy's a thing, and I'm really happy about that. If you feel like hanging back and just chatting for like, 5 or 10 minutes or something, feel free to do that too. I want to introduce a little bit of networking because I feel like we always have these meetups, but then we don't really talk to each other afterwards. So I'm inviting that for the first time as well.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me, everybody. This is great. And yeah, I'm happy to stay in touch. So let me know if I can be helpful. I dropped my email into the chat. So if anyone wants to send me an email, happy to talk about open source or security or whatever you want. Just let me know.